So welcome to Danos Pathway to Success video series. This series of interviews has been crafted to inspire and help those looking to advance their career by providing windows into the careers of those who've been successful in the industry. Today, I'm really pleased to welcome Michael Kitson. He is the Deputy CCO of Bridgewater Associates. I particularly wanted to interview Michael for this series of interviews because we've actually known each other for a number of years. And when I first met him, he was a compliance trainee at Citi, and he's subsequently advanced through the ranks, but he can tell you about that. So thank you for doing this for us, Michael. I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Grant, and to Danos for having me. In terms of my career story, I went to law school starting shortly after the financial crisis, and was always interested in financial markets because of the connectivity between what was happening in the news and how it was impacting sort of the day-to-day. And I always knew that I wanted to get into something that was connected to that. And so after law school, I decided to join Citi, which had this management associate program, which was really useful in a couple of ways. But the first of which is it really taught me how to be a compliance officer. And part of the reason for that was I did 4 rotations in different parts of the organization. And when you move around that much and you see that much diversity of business practice, you really learn how to learn about a business. And that's been tremendously valuable to me throughout my career, because one of the things you have to do as a compliance officer is be able to learn about the business that you're advising. And then after that, at Citi, I came to Bridgewater nearly 6 years ago. And that has been a fabulous career change for me, largely because I was able to continue to engage in the subject matter that I find really fascinating, engagement with markets and connectivity between what you're seeing in the news and the day-to-day, as well as work with a fabulous team of people who have been supportive all along. And at Bridgewater, I've been lucky enough to move from primarily advising our client service and external facing folks to more recently being named Deputy CCO and helping oversee our compliance program with our Chief Compliance Officer.
First of all, I was quite keen to ask you what it is that you really love about your job or professional, I guess, the arena of compliance.
The first thing that I'd highlight, and this is more about the substance of the work, is what's wonderful about being a compliance officer is you're really connected to both the regulatory environment and the way laws and regulations are changing in ways that matter to your business, but also you're really connected to the business environment. You're connected to your internal clients, and your job is to navigate the regulatory environment in a way that can facilitate the appropriate achievement of business goals. And that's always been really fascinating to me as a lawyer and compliance officer that's interested in business. And so it's a terrific profession if you want to be able to understand both sides of the coin, as it were. One of the things that's also true about Bridgewater, and I think this is just so critically important, and I've been lucky, is it's just a tremendous group of really intelligent, driven, good people. And while it's really critical to love what you do, it's even more important to like who you're working with.
Do you think that you have are there any secrets that you have in terms of how you've been successful within compliance and how you've had a relatively quick trajectory really over the last few years to get to the point of being Deputy CCO of a very prominent hedge fund, obviously?
I'm not sure about secrets, but one of the things that I've really focused on is to always be in learning mode, to always be learning more about my employer, to always be learning more about our business, to always be learning more about the regulatory environment, and importantly, how those things relate to one another. And one of the habits that I've really gotten into is to be pretty disciplined about having a way of keeping on top of each of those things, a way of keeping on top of what's going on at Bridgewater. How is our business evolving? And then also what's going on in the legal and regulatory environment, what's going on in the world. And so I have a daily reading list. I pay a lot of attention to the way in which the regulators are communicating what their rule changes are, what they're worried about, or what have you. And the other thing that I pay a lot of attention to is what our clients are thinking about. And I mean that both internal clients, Bridgewater business people, and what Bridgewater's clients are asking us. One of the things I've gotten in the habit of doing is trying to make sure that what my clients are reading, I'm reading too, so I can, intuit the types of questions that are likely to come.
Drilling down on that is really helpful to people who are watching this thinking, I'm just out of law school. I'm looking to carve my way in the world of financial services compliance in the US or wherever in the world. What are the skills that I need to be thinking of and polishing and practicing even when I'm a junior that will take me through to be a successful senior within the industry?
I think probably the most important attribute to focus on as a sort of compliance officer beginning her career is to recognize that you have to be comfortable not knowing things and comfortable learning them as quickly as you can. And so you're never going to know everything there is to know about the regulatory environment. You're never going to know everything there is to know about your business. But what you have to become great at is you have to become great at learning about both of them as quickly as you can. And so the thing, it might be a little bit counterintuitive, but I'd focus less on knowing and more about learning how to ask great questions so you can learn. I guess the other thing that I would highlight is it's really critical to pick a place that's going to teach you how to be a compliance officer or a lawyer. Mentorship and having someone that'll show you the ropes is really important because it's indicative of the fact that it's not all on you. It's your job to learn and contribute, but everyone needs guidance, no matter how junior or senior you are in the organization. And so I definitely focus on trying to be a learner, but trying to find a teacher. It's really critical to make sure that you're in a place that can make your apprenticeship go well.
How has the industry changed in itself since you started that?
There's been all kinds of things that have changed, but there's two constants, I think, along the way. The first is that the world's getting more complicated, both from a regulatory perspective and from the way in which market participants are evolving. And because the world's getting more complicated, the mandate and demands on the compliance officer and the compliance function have grown quite a bit. And so it's more difficult to be a compliance officer today than it was 10 years ago, but it's also much more fascinating because you're having exposure to much more diverse and developing regulatory structures and businesses and macroeconomic events than you would have before.
To kind of wrap up with the final question, I think that the key thing that a lot of people want to know, particularly when they're at junior level or an entry level into the industry, is if there's one piece of advice that you would give to someone entering the industry or looking to become a compliance officer, what would be that piece of advice?
Let me offer three rather than one, if that's okay. It's really critical to be empathetic to the people you work with. And I mean that in a very specific way. I think you need to think about how the people you're dealing with are going to interpret your advice. It's critical that you not just be correct, but are able to be interpreted and heard and applied, right? And so if you're talking to senior leadership, you need to think about what their concerns are, how they're going to interpret what you're saying, and importantly, how you can be practical to help them achieve their goals while also complying with relevant obligations. And so that in my view is critical. But it's not just empathy upwards, it's empathy all around. You need to be someone that can be understood and viewed as a partner for everybody in the firm, irrespective of their ranks or titles. I guess the second thing that I would say is important to recognize that while you're the CEO of your career, you're going to need advisors. You're going to need your board of directors that can point you in the right direction, give you advice and feedback along the way. I think it's critical to have a group of people that have disparate opinions that'll give you their views to make sure that you can understand where you're going along the way. And then finally, I think it's really critical that folks recognize that there's a degree of luck when it comes to career progression, but the most important thing is to try to have the best batting average you can, to show up every day, do the best you can, and recognize that over time, if you continue to do a good job, things should work out.
Thank you very much, Mike. Really appreciate it. If you'd like more information on our Pathway to Success series, please view the full series on our website or contact one of us at Danos. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Grant.